When I Fall by Scarlet Emerald 32. Chapter 18. Rick looked slowly around the church at everyone assembled. Talisa noted how absolutely drained he seemed, physically, mentally, and emotionally. She shot a glance 3 seats in front of her to the right where Eugene sat. After their conversation in her bedroom, she'd asked him to wait and walk to the church separately from her, and she now sat towards the back, next to Enid. She knew it was the right call. Getting him off of Negan's radar was more important than anything to her, after the mess she'd created with her quick temper, but purposefully distancing herself, even just in public, felt wrong. Rick sighed heavily and put his hands on his hips as he spoke.
I thought about hiding some of the guns. I did it before. I figured I could bury some out there. Maybe we wouldn't need them for years.
He looked up pointedly and held each person's gaze.
But what if the saviors find those guns? What if we run into them when we have them on us? One of us dies. Maybe more than one. Maybe a lot more. It doesn't matter how many bullets we have. It isn't enough. They win. Black and white. Hiding a couple guns isn't going to change that.
He looked out over the crowd again. Talisa could see how desperate he was to make them understand, to get them on his side.
We don't have to like it, but we need to give them over. A Glock 9 and a 22, that's what they're looking for. Who has them?
It seemed that no one wanted to meet his eye as the room filled with silence. Rick sighed again and shook his head in frustration.
Someone has to know where they are, or they know who does.
When he was once again met with stony silence, he ran his hands through his hair and looked at them all in disbelief.
They're going to kill Olivia. Do you understand that? They'll do it.
Why do they care?
A man named Kevin, one of the original members of Alexandria, stood and glared at Rick.
2 guns aren't a threat to them, but they could help protect us from whatever else is out there.
Rick stared at him for a long moment before he spoke.
Do you have them?
Kevin sighed heavily and shook his head as he slumped back into his seat.
I wish I did.
Rick pressed his hands against the edges of the pulpit at the front of the church and seemed to be searching for the right words.
Most of you weren't there. You didn't have to watch it. But you can look away now, when someone dies, or you can help us solve this. We give them what they want, and we live in peace. It's as simple as that.
Talisa had noticed that Aaron and Eric had seemed to be having a heated argument in whispers 2 rows in front of her. And as Rick was speaking, Eric stood up.
Say we find the guns. How are we going to get out of this, Rick?
Talisa watched as the hurt and defeat in Rick's face seemed to deepen, and his shoulders slumped.
There is no getting out of this.
He straightened up slightly to address everyone again.
Let me make this perfectly clear. I'm not in charge anymore. Negan is. Now who has the guns?
He was met with more silence as everyone looked around the room, trying to figure out who must be lying. It was Eugene who finally spoke in the end.
Rick, not everyone is here.
Talisa stormed down the road. It was close to dusk, and the saviors had only been gone a few hours. She walked up the steps and through Deanna's front door. She forced herself to ignore the items scattered across the floors. If she thought about all of Reg and Deanna's precious treasures scattered and broken, she knew it would hit her too hard, and she had a purpose for her visit. She pushed the door open to the kitchen and saw Spencer standing at the island making a sandwich and Rosita sitting across from him. She walked immediately to Spencer and shoved him with all her might, catching him off guard and making him fall hard against the refrigerator. Rosita registered momentary surprise, but did nothing to stop her.
What the hell were you thinking? Olivia almost died today, you dumbass.
I was thinking I wasn't going to let Rick come in here and turn what my mother built into a dictatorship. I took them over a month ago. When I saw the way things were going, I wanted to make sure we had a contingency plan, and you being here proves I was right. It took him all of 1 hour to start telling everyone and making me out to be the bad guy. So, my community turns on me.
He didn't tell anybody, you overgrown man-child. I asked him point blank who did it, and I had to pry it out of him. He only told me because I'm a member of the council that runs this place, and he made me promise not to tell anyone else. And this had nothing to do with you thinking Rick isn't safe. It's about you being butthurt because the leader of this community doesn't see you with rose-colored glasses anymore and let you walk around doing whatever the hell you want and acting like you have a clue when you don't.
Spencer shot a look over at Rosita.
You want to jump in and defend me a little here?
Nope. She calmly took a sip of her drink, watching in amusement.
Ever since Rick has taken over, things have gone to shit. This place has fallen apart. More people have died in the past 2 months than they did in the past 2 years, including my entire family. And you're really going to stand here and defend Rick as a leader?
Spencer, I'm going to take this nice and slow, so you better listen.
She glared at him threateningly, and he wisely nodded.
There is a huge difference between things that have happened since Rick got here, and things that have happened because Rick got here. And it's time you understand that.
Spencer opened his mouth to speak again, but she cut him off.
I'm not finished. But you know what? Actually, sure. I do want to hear from you. Tell me, Spencer. Tell me what you would have done differently in the past 2 months to get us a different outcome. Or even better, what would your mother have done differently to keep these people alive?
Not attack the saviors to start. We lived here for over 2 years, and they never showed up once. Not until Rick put us on their radar.
That's a fair point.
Rosita shifted unhappily and opened her mouth to argue, but Talisa held up a hand to her.
Let's play that out, though, Spencer. We were running out of food. Our situation was dire when Jesus showed up. You really think if Deanna was here, she wouldn't have tried to make a deal with Hilltop?
Of course she would have. But it wouldn't have been to go out and start a war.
Putting aside the fact that it wouldn't have even been an option for us, because we didn't have fighters before Rick, Hilltop made it abundantly clear that we didn't have anything they needed in terms of a trade. Besides protection. Rick miscalculated. I'm not going to deny it. But if your mother was here when he made that call, she would have backed him 100%, and you know it. And this deal we have with the Saviors now, she would have accepted that too. You don't like the way things are? Well, join the damn club. But if you ever do anything to put these people in danger again, you're going to find out just how quickly this community can turn on you.
She turned to walk back out the door, and as she did, Spencer finally spoke again.
When I told Rick, I thought this whole thing was his fault. He told me if I ever spoke to him like that again, he'd break my jaw and knock my teeth out. Then he forced me to tell him that I understood, and I'd obey, remind you of anyone else.
Talisa didn't turn back or acknowledge him as she walked down the hall and out the door. As she reached the steps, she heard the door open behind her, and Rosita spoke.
He's an idiot. But he's not wrong about all of it.
Talisa sighed heavily.
No, he's not.
We can't live like this. If we let them do this to us, we're not living anymore. We're just existing. We have to do something. I don't understand how Rick doesn't see that.
He can't see it, not right now at least.
So you agree that we can't live this way?
I agree that this can't be a permanent solution. But Rosita, you aren't thinking about this clearly. God knows I get it, but you have to see it from Rick's perspective. You have the luxury of being able to give in to your righteous anger right now, because 1, you're not the leader. And 2, I'm sorry to say it, but in your mind you have nothing left to lose. Rick is swallowing all his pride and anger and outrage for the good of everyone around him right now, for the safety of his children and the woman he loves and every person he feels responsible for. It goes against every instinct he has inside of him, and it's ripping him to pieces, but he's doing it because he feels like it's the only way.
But it's not.
Maybe it isn't, but what you're doing isn't the answer either. I see you, Rosita, biding your time, waiting for your one moment to do something desperate and half-cocked. It's going to get someone killed.
Rosita made an angry noise and started to answer back, but Talisa cut her off.
Don't you think Rick, Michonne, Aaron, hell, even I would love to just beat him to a bloody pulp in the middle of the street? Of course we would. He killed our friends. He's actively torturing another of our friends, and he just destroyed our home because he could. But that's an emotional response, and one he's going to be expecting.
So you're saying Rick and the others are just biding their time? Because that's not what it looked like to me. It looked like he gave up.
He did. He did give up. And right now? No, Rick isn't biding his time. He fully believes that Negan won and has accepted that this is how life is. But you and I both know that's not Rick Grimes. It's going to happen slowly. Today was the worst of it. This was Negan's power play to show us just how far he can push us, knowing we won't fight back. The next few months will be rough. He'll ask for too much, make us put ourselves in danger to satisfy him, just to make sure we're really in line. Then he'll back off. Once he knows we're subservient and docile, he'll get bored. Once that happens, the Rick we know is going to start creeping his way back in.
How can you be sure?
It just comes down to faith. Do you have faith that the man you were out there side by side with for months, the man that fought quite literally tooth and nail to protect you all from anything and everything that threatened you, is still in there?
Rosita pulled her knees up to her chest.
I don't know anymore. But what I do know is I don't think I can stand looking at that pendejo's smug-ass face for months on end without doing something about it.
Then you better make sure when it happens, you do it on your own. I mean it, Rosita. I love you. I hope you know that by now. But there are a lot of other people I love around here too, including someone I'll admit I'm starting to love more than I thought I would ever love someone again, and I will not let you put them in danger for your vendetta.
Rosita stood to match her with an angry glare.
I've been looking out for him 10 times longer than you've even known him. I'm not about to put him in danger now.
Then I guess we don't have a problem.
I guess we don't.
Talisa walked up the stairs to the medical office. When she opened the door, she was unsurprised to see Tara standing by the counter. She had a book in her hands, and she was absent-mindedly running her hands over the cover. Tara had returned the day before, with the news that there had been an accident. She'd barely escaped, and she'd lost Heath. A fact that Talisa hadn't even begun to process yet. It seemed like every time she told herself she couldn't take one more loss, the universe decided to test the theory. Yet somehow, she was still standing, and she was determined to take that as a win. Tara looked up when she came in and smiled slightly.
She always said this was going to be the last one she read.
She handed a book with the title Neurology, the Science of the Brain, to Talisa.
She said if she could get decently confident with the rest of the body, then she might be brave enough to tackle the brain.
Ironic, considering as a psychiatrist, the brain was kinda already her specialty.
That's exactly what I said.
Talisa went over and wrapped an arm around her shoulders. Tara didn't say anything, but she leaned in after a minute.
Eugene and I are going out on an overnight run once he gets back from whatever he's doing with Rosita. He's mapped out a location he thinks might have technology the Saviors will be interested in. There anything you want us to keep an eye out for?
No, I'm good.
She looked up at Talisa with a smirk.
An overnight run, huh? You two? Out there on the road? Alone?
Yes, eating out of cans and sleeping in the car. Very romantic. With everything going on, romance has kinda been on the back burner.
Yeah, I get that. Just don't put it off too long, okay? Nothing's guaranteed anymore.
Talisa gave her a sad smile and hugged her once more before walking back out of the office. She went home and double-checked the contents of her backpack before heading down towards the gate. She got there just in time to see Eugene and Rosita walking back in.
Hey, haircut. Kevin told me you two went out. I thought maybe you forgot what time we said we were going to leave.
I did not. Rosita enlisted me for a small side venture, but I made sure she was aware of the time of our departure and that I had no intentions of being late.
Rosita was already walking away from them towards Spencer's house, and Talisa watched her go, but said nothing. As much as she was worried about Rosita, especially after their conversation a few days earlier, today her focus was on Eugene. She looked back up at him and smiled.
So, you ready to hit the road?
I will be presently, just as soon as I go back to our home and collect my...
Talisa held up a second backpack and he grinned at her.
So now we just have to pick which vehicle we're taking for this road trip.
She turned to look at the ones lined up next to the gate.
Well, The main item we are attempting to acquire on this particular venture is small enough to fit into any standard-sized vehicle, so you can take your pick.
You still not going to tell me what it is we're getting or where we're going?
That is correct. In my opinion, the surprise is half the fun. And being as our day-to-day lives are severely lacking in the fun department as of late, I will take my small amusements where I can get them.
Talisa glared at him.
I'm trying to decide if this newfound mysteriousness is aggravating or attractive.
Well, feel free to let me know when you've settled on a decision.
She patted the roof of an old station wagon towards the front of the line.
How's this on gas?
She asked Kevin, who was in charge of the vehicles.
Full tank and has 2 more 3-gallon containers in the back.
Figure if we don't find any good place to hole up for the night, at least we have plenty of room in the back.
She said, looking over her shoulder at Eugene.
All right, then. This is our ride. You want to drive, or are you formally calling shotgun?
You got the map right? And you're the one who knows where we're going, so it makes sense that you navigate and I'll drive.
I'm entirely all right with that.
He walked around to the far side of the car and hopped in. Talisa drove out through the gates and carefully down the road between the cars until they were in the clear, and then looked over at Eugene, who had the map unfolded and was reading it intently.
Where to, Gilligan?
According to this, we need to drive straight for about 4 miles until we pick up I-66 West, and then we stay on that for a good while, Skipper.
All right then. I-66, here we come. And by the way, great choice on the mode of transport.
She nodded towards the dashboard.
I don't know if you happen to notice, but it has a tape deck.
Eugene looked at her in curiosity, but she simply smiled back and inclined her head towards his bag. He leaned down and opened it, and a broad smile spread across his face as he pulled out the cassettes Tara had given him for his birthday.
Pop one of those suckers in, and let's see if you can make a metal head out of me yet, haircut.
They spent about an hour enjoying the music, though Talisa acknowledged that she was enjoying watching Eugene enjoy the music more than anything, how he would drum along on the dashboard and sing loudly slightly off-key. It was the most relaxed and confident she'd ever seen him. When the chords of the last song ended, she looked over at him with an affectionate smile.
I gotta say, you might be onto something there. They really do rock.
They do indeed.
She reached over and slipped her hand into his as he looked back out the window at the expanse of green fields they were passing.
This is nice. After all the shit of the past few weeks, it's nice to feel almost normal. Like we're just a couple, taking a road trip together.
Eugene looked back at her with a warm expression of agreement.
You take a lot of road trips before?
Not as an adult. In my youth, my father took us on the exact same road trip every single year, and after spending 10 years in the same car, traveling the same roads. As you can imagine, the novelty somewhat wore off.
Where'd you go?
My father was an avid steam train enthusiast, so every year he would take us on an 11-hour trip to Chattanooga, Tennessee to
The Tennessee Valley Railroad Museum?
Talisa's jaw dropped as she took her eyes off the road quickly to shoot him a disbelieving look.
Yes. How did you know that?
My dad did the exact same thing. Every summer, 9 hours down from Michigan to Chattanooga to ride that steam engine.
Are you being entirely serious right now?
Eugene stared at her with just as much disbelief.
I swear to God.
He sat back heavily against his seat, taking in the new information.
It's entirely possible that at some point in time we could have been riding the same train on the same day and never have known it.
It sure is.
She reached over to take his hand again and smiled.
You ever go to Little Annie's?
You mean the restaurant that happens to serve the best pies in the continental United States? To this day, I still dream about her chocolate silk pie.
I was always a sucker for her raspberry coconut. But chocolate silk was my dad's weakness. Small world, huh?
It certainly is.
After a few more minutes of quiet, peaceful countryside passed them by, Eugene pointed to a sign at the edge of the road.
I believe that is our turnoff.
Talisa turned onto the smaller side road, and after another minute or two, they came to a long chain-link fence with several buildings clustered about 200 feet away on the other side of it. Talisa looked back at Eugene in surprise.
An airport?
She could plainly see several small one-prop planes and a few private jets scattered across the overgrown runway.
I know Rick said think outside the box, but I gotta say, I don't think this rig has the towing capability to bring back a private jet.
Eugene laughed and shook his head.
I assure you that is not our intended quarry. Now, the main gate should be just another half-mile down the road, and due to the distinct lack of walkers present on the interior, I'd say we lucked out, and it's going to be closed.
Eugene was correct in his assumption, and after another minute or two of driving, he hopped out of the passenger seat to slide back the large gate and allow her to drive through. He got back into the car and directed her towards the largest of the buildings. She pulled up beside it, and they both hopped out of the car.
Main hangar, huh? Gotta say I'm still at a loss for what you think they're gonna have in here that the Saviors want.
Well, if you'll follow me inside, I'd be happy to enlighten you.
Eugene opened the door on the side of the building and ushered her in ahead of him. The hangar was a large metal building with a curved roof. The only light came trickling down from the multiple skylights, giving the large empty room an eerie twilight feel. There was a sleek black private jet parked in the center of the open space, and Talisa looked from it back to Eugene with a smirk.
Well, would you look at that? Some very important dignitary or politician forgot to come back for their ride when the world went to shit.
As impressive as that is, as you so rightly stated, transporting it home would be a hell of a feat. Would you like to see my far more practical alternative?
Yes, I would.
He took her hand, and they walked to a set of metal-grated stairs that led to a balcony with several rooms off of it. They walked to the largest of the rooms, which had a nameplate reading, Main Office, and Eugene opened the door. There was one walker pinned behind a fallen cabinet that began grabbing feebly at them when they entered the room.
Dibs.
You got it, big guy.
He walked over and pulled out his machete, easily dispatching the walker before turning to assess the rest of the room.
There she is, our quarry.
He stepped aside and motioned to the desk on the far side of the room next to the window. Talisa's jaw dropped as she recognized the large box with its knobs and dials and looked back at him.
A ham radio? That's what we came all this way for?
Yes, ma'am. I theorized, entirely correctly I might add, that a small-time operation such as this might still be utilizing a more basic system for air traffic communication, and, as such, we could conceivably pilfer it, and as long as we can get it in working order, offer it up to the Saviors for their long-range communications needs.
Eugene, if I've said it once, I'll say it 1,000,000 times. That brain of yours is absolutely incredible.
She walked over and ran a hand across the top of the radio, sighing as she did. After another second, she felt Eugene's arms wrap around her waist, and he rested his chin on her shoulder.
What's wrong?
I just wish we didn't have to give it to them. You know, I hate the idea of giving them something they can use to get more organized over greater distances, hurt more people.
Believe me, I completely understand.
Eugene stood there holding her as they both stared out the window across the runway, and after another moment he sighed.
Talisa, I need to tell you something.
She turned in his arms to face him, concerned by the seriousness of his expression.
Okay, what is it?
When Rosita took me outside the gates today, we went to the machine shop, and she asked me to make her a bullet. Just one.
Eugene, please tell me you said no.
I did, initially. I'm not blind to the emotional distress Rosita currently finds herself in, and I attempted to explain to her that I understand what she is feeling, but going off all half-cocked isn't going to achieve the vengeance she's craving, and will likely end up getting herself and possibly others killed.
And what did she say?
She
He looked down at his feet.
reminded me that I would not be alive right now if it hadn't been for Abraham's protection, and of the fact that I spent the majority of the time I knew him lying to him and being a coward. She told me I owed him, and the least I could do was this one small thing to help her make it right. So, in the end, I did it.
He looked up at her and a tear slid down his cheek.
Today, I chose to be a man who was brave enough to honor his friend and face the consequences if they come. But what I failed to take into consideration is that I am no longer the only person affected by my decisions.
Talisa sighed deeply and then leaned up to kiss him, resting her forehead against his when she pulled away.
I understand. Am I happy that you did something that could most likely get you killed if Negan finds out? No. And I'm even less happy that that bitch used your past against you too.
She's angry. I'm not arguing that what she said wasn't unfair. It was. But it was also the truth. Every word. And we can't hold the things she says against her right now. She's grieving just like the rest of us.
If her grieving comes back on you, you better believe I'm holding it against her. But that brings me to my second point. I understand why you did it. And in a way, I'm proud of you for it. I'm glad you told me, but as of the end of this conversation, it never happened, okay? Rosita is digging her own grave. I wish she wasn't. But we can't stop her if she's determined to do it. But you are not going down with her. Understood?
Eugene smiled and leaned down to kiss her again.
Yes, ma'am. Now, I'm going to have to do a detailed inspection of that radio to make sure all the parts are functioning. Or, if they aren't, that I at least have comparable parts back in Alexandria with which to fix it. You want to go investigate the rest of the facility and see if there are any other goodies we can bring home?
I can do that.
She hugged him tightly again before stepping back and heading for the door. When she got to it, she paused and looked back at him.
Hey, Eugene?
He looked up expectantly.
I love you.
He smiled and nodded in her direction.
And I love you.
It took Eugene about an hour to finish his inspection. He walked out onto the balcony of the hangar, and Talisa looked up at him from the ground and smiled.
Hey, honey, how was work?
She was standing next to the private jet, which she'd managed to push the portable boarding steps over to and get the door open. Now as the sun set and the hangar darkened, it was glowing with light from the inside.
What exactly have you gotten up to for the last hour?
I got us deluxe 5-star accommodations for the evening. Come have a look.
He walked down to the main floor and followed her up the stairs and into the jet, where she'd hung camping lanterns every few feet, giving the entire cabin a warm glow.
Here we have the living and dining spaces, with plush leather interior, of course, and in the back, a suite with a king-sized bed and full bathroom. Not that it's functioning, of course, but you get the idea.
This is entirely unbelievable.
Entirely. And wait until you lay down on that bed. Softest mattress I've ever felt, and those sheets. Gotta be 100% Egyptian cotton. I always thought that was just a thing snooty rich people said, but oh my god, they are so soft.
Eugene chuckled, obviously amused by her enthusiasm.
Well, I look forward to experiencing that.
So, you want to see the cockpit?
How is that a question you believe you even need to ask?
So be honest. If somebody came in here and told you that you had to fly this plane right now, could you do it?
My takeoff and landing procedures would be shaky, and there would be a fair bit of trial and error in certain areas, but I believe I have acquired enough knowledge on air travel that I could get us from point A to point B without too much of an issue.
God, that is so hot.
Eugene blushed slightly.
Oh, I almost forgot. I found us some dinner.
She jumped up and ran back into the cabin.
Did you?
Eugene got up from the pilot's seat to follow her back.
Turns out at least one of the people who worked here was a bit of a hoarder, or a prepper, not really sure. But there were canned goods galore behind one of the shelves, so the only question I have for you is, beefaroni or ravioli?
She turned and held both cans up with a smile.
Oh, I am a beefaroni man all the way.
Perfect, because I'm a ravioli girl.
A match made in heaven.
He wrapped his arms around her and kissed her slowly.
And for the record, while you may find my competence in matters of aviation attractive,
He leaned over and kissed the edge of her jaw just below her ear, making her shiver.
a beautiful woman offering me my favorite canned pasta is a scenario of peak sexiness by my count.
She laughed lightly, and he continued a trail of kisses down the side of her neck. She sighed and leaned into him for a blissful moment, but then pulled back and pushed the can of beefaroni against his chest.
Dinner first, haircut.
When he met her eye, his expression seemed almost unreadable. There was surprise there, and a little hesitance, but also excitement, and something deeper. But after a moment, he simply kissed her lightly and said,
Yes, ma'am.
You want another can?
Talisa asked a little while later.
No, I can safely say that for the first time in quite a while I have eaten my fill. And while it was what many would call a meal of entirely average fare, it was in all ways exquisite by my reckoning.
Does that mean you didn't save room for dessert?
She saw his eyebrows raise slightly and the flush creeping onto his cheeks, and she realized the implication of her question.
No, I meant actual dessert.
She quickly reached down and grabbed another can.
I found chocolate pudding.
Well, as appealing as chocolate pudding may be, and I assure you I am not a man who has ever turned his nose up at a pudding cup, I think I might prefer retiring for the evening, if that's something you would be inclined to do.
Talisa raised a teasing eyebrow.
Eugene Herman Porter, are you trying to seduce me?
I suppose that would depend entirely on how seducible you find yourself to be in this moment.
Talisa gave him a wry smile and then stood, grabbing her backpack and walking back towards the bedroom.
Give me 5 minutes.
She winked at him as she walked through the door. She set the backpack on the edge of the bed and looked around, surprised by how nervous she was. This wasn't her first rodeo, or even her second or third for that matter, so she wasn't sure why she felt like she was about to burst out of her skin with nerves. She opened her backpack and pulled out the pajamas she'd packed. Just deciding what to bring had been an ordeal in and of itself. While she'd been aware that this turn of events was a real possibility when she'd suggested the trip, she'd also acknowledged that it wasn't a given, seeing as they had no idea where they'd end up for the night. Therefore, she'd decided against the one cotton nightie she owned. While it would have undoubtedly made Eugene's heart skip several beats, it would have been impractical if they'd ended up sleeping in the back of the car. She'd settled on a simple black camisole and brought both a small pair of silk shorts and a more practical pair of flannel pajama pants, so she was covered for all contingencies. She put on the first of the two along with the top, and then went into the bathroom to run a brush through her hair and quickly brush her teeth, using her bottle of water to rinse. She walked back over to the door and opened it. Eugene looked up at her and seemed to freeze, staring at her without blinking.
You coming in here, haircut?
He stood immediately and walked over to her, reaching out to touch her hesitantly, as if he was afraid she'd disappear if he did. She reached out, grabbing him firmly by the hips and pulling him in.
Hi.
Hello?
She held his gaze as she reached up and carefully undid the first button on his shirt. She moved it aside and leaned in, gently kissing his collarbone. He let out a long, slow breath and closed his eyes. She undid another button as she kissed the side of his neck and brushed her fingertips across his chest. He made a small noise between a sigh and a groan and wrapped his arms around her, pulling her against him and kissing her hard. She responded in kind by burying her hands in his hair as she did. She gave a small gasp of surprise when his hand slid down her back and across her rear, and he picked her up easily. She wrapped her legs around him and looked down at him, raising an eyebrow in question.
Somebody has some moves he failed to mention.
I assure you, anything done from this point forward is based purely on the myriad of things I've been dreaming of doing with and to you, not on any previous experiences.
He pulled her down and kissed her again. As he did, he moved forward and gently sat her down on the bed. She scooted back and smiled shyly up at him as he awkwardly reached down to untie his boots and take them off along with his socks.
Sorry, I'm not sure there's an objectively attractive way for one to take one's shoes off, but if there is, I, for one, have yet to master it.
Get over here, you goober.
Eugene obliged, climbing onto the bed and lying next to her. He lay on his side, propping himself up on his elbow so he could look down at her. She traced fingers down the side of his face, and he caught her by the wrist as she did, turning his head and kissing it lightly. He trailed his lips lightly up her arm, sending a shiver through her. He pulled her close, kissing along her collarbone, and she sighed softly when he reached the hollow of her throat. The effect on him was immediate. He made a soft noise of approval and tilted her head back with one hand kissing down the side of her neck, while the other slid slowly down her torso.
Eugene.
She attempted to pull back so she could look at him, but he pulled her in tighter so they were pressed fully against each other, and his hand made its way to the small of her back, holding her there.
Eugene, wait. Just a minute.
She used all her willpower to push him back slightly, putting a small amount of space between them so she could look up at him. He gazed down at her, his lips parted slightly as his eyes roved up and down her body. She bit her lip as she put her hand against his cheek and brought his attention back to her face.
Focus, haircut.
Oh, I assure you, I have never in my life been as wholly focused and locked in as I am in this moment.
She smiled in spite of herself and resisted the urge to pull him back in and kiss him again.
Okay, I need to get this out before you get me completely sidetracked again.
Then I suggest you go about saying whatever it is you need to say, because I have no intention of stopping.
He leaned down to kiss her neck again.
Eugene, come on.
She pushed him back hard and gave him a playful glare.
If you are attempting to dissuade me with the use of force, I feel compelled to tell you that tactic will have the entirely opposite effect.
She rolled her eyes.
Can you just slow your roll for 30 seconds, Porter? We need to talk about something before we get too carried away. And believe me, I plan on getting carried away.
All right.
He brushed her hair back from her shoulders so it fanned out across the pillow, and she took his hand in hers, intertwining their fingers as she spoke.
As much as I know we've both been waiting for this night to happen, I think we need to be realistic and practical about where this is going. Since the Saviors cleared out our medical supplies, they also cleared out certain necessities, that we would need to be smart about this. So unless you somehow found a way to procure more...
Eugene's face fell slightly and he groaned, rolling over on his side and throwing an arm over his eyes. Talisa suddenly felt very self-conscious and was horrified when she realized there was a lump in her throat and her eyes began to well up.
I'm sorry. Are you angry?
Eugene moved his arm aside and looked over at her.
No, of course not.
He wrapped an arm around her and pulled her close so her head rested against his chest.
I would be lying if I didn't say I wasn't disappointed, profoundly disappointed even, but I'm not angry, frustrated at our situation, indubitably, but not angry. I have the most beautiful woman in the world lying in my arms, and 100% Egyptian cotton sheets to sleep on tonight. What could I possibly have to be angry about?
She laughed lightly and leaned over to kiss the spot in the middle of his chest.
There are other methods that we can use with time, but it's definitely not something I think we should risk trying for your first rodeo.
I can admit that logic is sound. Full transparency, though, you may need to permit me a minute or two to go walk a lap around the hangar. Try to get the train we set on the tracks back into the station, if you catch my meaning.
Well, hang on now.
Talisa sat up slightly so she could look down at him.
I never said we were done here.
Eugene raised a questioning eyebrow at her.
You're familiar with the baseball analogy, correct?
I believe I am, yes.
Well then.
She threw a leg over him so she was fully on top of him and leaned down to kiss him.
The only thing I specified is that you're not going to be making a home run tonight. There are 3 other bases we have plenty of time to explore.
Well, in that case...
He smiled up at her and then pulled her down to kiss her again. When I Fall is a work of fiction based on AMC's The Walking Dead. Any characters not created by the author are the property of said company. The story will continue in the next chapter.